Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday, 15th of June, and you're here to watch the webinar Rail Meets Terminal. Yes, hello, everybody. And as I said, you're here to watch the webinar Rail Meets Terminal. And terminals are the place where every modality meets. You have the trains, you have the ships, you have the trucks. And yet, this meeting place is something we not really frequently discuss during these webinars. So today, we have gathered several experts on the topic. Onno de Jong, you work for Ecorys as a transport consultant. Nicolas, Maes, you work for DirkZwager. Thank you very much for being here in person. And we have two online speakers. I would like to welcome Dominik Landa from HHLA, from HHLA. Welcome, Dominik.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. And we have Robert Lapins. Do I say it correctly, Robert?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. And you're from Nexxiott, an IT software developer.
Absolutely.
We're going to start off talking about port efficiency. And this is because we are in the run-up of our next event. Our next event is the RailFreight Connect in Bremen. This is taking place on 6th and 7th of September. And we're there to discuss the meeting place. So the meeting place between rail and ports. And we're here today to pre-discuss the topic a little bit. Some of you are also speakers at that event. Now, Dominik, I would like to start with you. And you are not an unfamiliar face for the industry. You worked for the Port of Gdansk at first. Now you work for HHLA, as all of you say. Can you explain what your responsibilities are?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. Initially, I worked for Maes for 5 years as operations head for Central East Europe. Then I joined DCT Gdansk, so today Baltic Hub. And now I have a pleasure of working in HHLA International. So HHLA International is responsible for all the non-German investments of HHLA, being terminals in Tallinn, in Muuga, in Trieste, in Odessa, also Ukrainian intermodal company in Ukraine, and HHLA project logistics company in Caucasus and Central Asia. And I'm responsible for the commercial matters and intermodal.
That's good to have you then. And you're also a speaker at the summit in September, so that's good.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So I think if we can name one keyword when it comes to ports and terminals, it's efficiency. Now,
Yes.
Why is efficiency so important?
Well, efficiency is the name of the game, I think, for all of us. Our industry is struggling a bit when I see it with some of the stuff that has been with us for many years that is now rapidly changing. So the vessels are getting larger, the terminals are getting larger. We are subject to changes. The exchanges of the vessels are getting bigger and bigger. It is not uncommon to have exchanges of 5, 10, even 12,000 containers per vessel call, which then means that you have 5,000 containers to be discharged and 5,000 containers to be loaded. That's a massive amount of containers that we need to not only offload the vessel, but we also need to depart them to the hinterland, which then means, obviously, that this is where they are hitting the rail. And, there are a few terminals in the world of ports that can do a very good job just being a transshipment hub. But for the majority of the ports and terminals, the intermodal links are very, very important, because you could have the best terminal in the world, but without a good hinterland access, both for road and rail, you're going to be stuck with a number of containers dwelling on your yard, which is not something that we all want.
No. But why does it all have to be done so fast?
Well, we all, again, work for customer. This is the service industry. We are in the service industry, which then means that regardless if you're a terminal operator, intermodal operator, IT company, producer of containers, shipping line, we all, in the end, work to satisfy the very same customer, which then means the customer demand is also changing. They request us to be efficient, to make sure that the containers are getting to the place of destination in a manner that was agreed and as we discussed, in the same cost, in the same efficiency, at the same time. Now, when we look at the terminal operations, the efficiency is also very much linked to the cost, which then again, not only we need to be efficient and fast in operating, safely operating, but we also need to be cost efficient. And the more let's say unpaid, unproductive moves you do, the efficiency is hurting, because you need to do all the housekeeping moves of the terminal, which again takes time, which is not something that we want to waste, and it's also costly, which is something that the shareholders don't want to see at any terminal. Yeah. And then again, this is the name of the game. We need to be efficient. We need to provide customers what they want. And now this is changing. As we were discussing some time ago, the requests from the customers are changing. The new let's say employees who are coming are very much used to, as it will be most likely shared already by my colleague, that are used to IT solutions. We are all living with the telephone and mobile in our hands, and we can do almost everything.
But can you explain what is changing in the demand of the customers? What did they expect before that they don't expect anymore, or what do they expect more now?
Well, I think one of the elements is visibility, right? So the customers, they just simply want to know when the container will arrive. In the past, they used to get, the EDI messages, which are supposed to be, EDI is coming from, I think the standard, the electronic data interchange standard was developed like many, many years ago, and it's still in use. Now we have the API, yes, we have the blockchain, but look at this. I mean, until very recently, the shipping lines were requesting the customer to provide in paper the original BL, which then means that, you were shipping something from China to Rotterdam, for example, or to Hamburg, and the customer, if she or he wanted to retrieve the container from the terminal, needed to provide the shipping line with the actual paper signed document. Yeah. And then again, we are talking about environment-friendly solutions, and the ships which are consuming less energy. And then we ask people to fly the paper from China to Netherlands or Germany.
And when you speak of the customer, do you speak of the shipping liners, or do you speak of all the parties involved and all the other modalities as well?
I think all the parties involved, but in the end, we all work for one customer, being the ultimate cargo holder, right? The BCO, who is, let's say, who is the one that decides on which terminal to use, which port to use, which shipping line to use, which IT solution to use. And I think if we are not ready to provide them with these solutions, they will just choose someone else. And that's why we are all in the game. And that's why we all need to be looking into the best solutions, the most efficient solutions, just to stay in the game and to be ahead of the customer expectations.
Yeah, to make sure that you win over the other ports and to be better and to be faster. And yeah.
Yes.
And if I want to translate this into the rail freight industry, as a rail operator, how do I benefit from these super efficient solutions at the ports?
Well, I think you are also in the same situation like the port operators, i.e., you have expensive rail sets, you have expensive locomotives, you have very very high capex, so all of the cost that is associated with running your trains. Now you would like to use these assets the best way, the most efficient way possible, right? So you would like your set of platforms to be moving, for example, from Hamburg to Prague, very fast and efficient, so that when you come to port, the containers are ready. Then the terminal is loading your containers on your train set. You receive all the information, and after a few hours, the train is leaving, and then it goes up to the final place of destination without any hiccups, any efficiency losses. But still today, when we look at the situation, we are all in European Union, right? Most of the countries in Europe. Now, when we have the open borders, we go for vacations. The borders are open, right? We can go and move, and it's one of the foundations of the European Union. But when you are moving rail, I mean, you have the locomotives which need to be certified by each country. You have a different current, right? So a different voltage, etc. You need to have the driver that is speaking the local language. I mean, again, looking at the air freight industry, if you have a pilot that would be speaking in all languages that he's passing through or she's passing through from Far East to Europe, I mean, there would be no pilots.
Yeah, I'm asking because I also have the feeling that there is a mixed interest between the rail freight industry and the shipping liners and the ports, maybe. And when you see all those shipping liners building bigger ships and having more containers to be handled,
Yes.
how well able are rail freight operators to handle all these volumes?
Well, I think we have all same goal, because it is not enough that the terminal is super efficient and then let's say the rail is or the trains are arriving late, or we don't know what is arriving, right? Or which train is coming to pick up which containers, because we could be super efficient, but then again, if not all the actors in the chain are efficient, then it's like the weakest chain or weakest link in the chain, right? It means that we will be suboptimal in what we do. So it is our joint goal to make sure that whatever we do, we work together in order to fight these inefficiencies. Because if we, as terminal, for example, we know that the train, for example, from Prague is coming to Hamburg, right? We know that it will be carrying 40-foot containers, which should be going on this and this and this vessel. We can pre-plan. We can already put them in the right sequence. Now, if we even knew that the containers arriving on the vessels, we know that the next mode of transport would be this very train that goes back to Prague, and it arrives on these 2 or 3 vessels. We could pre-plan the yard in order to make it super efficient, because then we know that, okay, these containers will be loaded in a sequence on this very train. And if the train arrives on time, if the vessel arrives on time, and if we have everything prepared, and it's easy.
Yeah, this is in theory, of course, but you've seen a lot of ports, you've worked at a lot of ports. Is this cooperation happening as it should be?
It is always something that we can improve in any port and any terminal. I think the good thing is that we see that the industry is really now changing, evolving, and it's looking for efficiencies. It's looking for improvements. As you said yourself, I mean, the vessels are getting larger. Yes, so the terminal operators are not only looking into, okay, I need to buy bigger cranes. Oh, yeah. I just bought 5 years ago cranes which are not big enough because we didn't know that they will be, So there's a lot of investment that is happening, but the same goes for IT systems. The same goes for everything else that we use in our daily work.
But in the beginning, in the beginning, you said there are ports who are just transshipment hubs, and there are ports that are taken into account their hinterland connections.
Yes.
So what is the main difference between those ports? Are there ports that are really not that focused on their hinterlands?
Yes, I would say that there are some ports which are located in such strategic areas in the world where the trade lanes are crossing. For example, the port of Singapore. That's a massive port which is by the strait, and then we have all these vessels passing by. And then again, if you want to do an transshipment, for example, to have like a hub and spoke system with the airlines, right? So you have a big hub which is Singapore, and then you have all the smaller ports, let's say in the Southeast Asia, that the vessels are coming from, delivering the containers, and then these containers are loaded on a big mother vessel that is going to, for example, to Rotterdam or to Hamburg or to Bremerhaven, right? And then again, there is no need to have a very efficient hinterland solution if you have a port that is doing in majority only transshipment operations, i.e., from the smaller vessel to the bigger vessel, from the and the other way around. Because let's look at Singapore. I mean, this is a beautiful country, very nice culture, but it's not, the hinterland is not big enough, right? So there's this with the port that is handling, I don't know, 20 million TEUs, only maybe 5% is ending up in Singapore. Whereas all the 95% is then loaded on the vessels and then moving further.
Yeah, but that is also the natural situation then. But I mean, within Europe, are ports well aware of the need to serve their hinterlands and to serve rail freight?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I think we all are very much aware. I think this is one of the key elements in all strategies to make sure that the link between the port, the terminal, and the hinterland is the most efficient as it can be. So there is a very often situation where the ports are pushing the hinterland terminals, the infrastructure providers, the rail infrastructure providers, to make sure that the rail links are of let's say of the capacity that would allow the ports to grow. Because we could grow our infrastructure, and that's great that we can handle, the great vessels, etc. But if the containers are stuck in the port because the rail cannot come and pick them up, it's like, it's not very efficient. That's why the ports are pushing for the investment in the hinterland.
Yeah. Do you agree, Onno?
Yeah, fully. I know we'll talk upon this later on, but this is exactly, you need to have this, because transshipment ports, yes, you have them in the Mediterranean, but most ports can't exist by just serving local industries. It's all destined for a hinterland destination. And yeah, indeed, what I always learned, and what I still find is intriguing, if you have like an integrated business model where both, for instance, deep sea shipping, terminal operation, and hinterland operation is within the same conglomerate or larger company, do you then get a better performance instead of when you compete for it and you have an independent rail operator that needs to cooperate with a certain terminal group, and the terminal has to deal with the deep sea shipping company, and that's indeed where I think, and that's maybe something we can touch upon, this neutrality of the information is so important, that you're willing to share all this information instead of keeping it to yourself and optimizing just your own.
That's a very interesting point you touched upon. We also talked about it. You're working for Royal DirkZwager, and you can explain what you do.
That's correct. Hi, Marjorie. Thanks for having me here today. So my name is Nicolas Maes. I work for Royal DirkZwager. It's a Dutch-based company, and like the name Royal says, it's been around for quite some time. And we've always focused on vessel reporting. And so in the past, this used to be with people with binoculars looking for vessels that enter the port. And basically, nowadays, we focus on making sure that everybody who plays a role in the port ecosystem has the right information at the right time to make correct decisions. And Dominik already touched upon this. So visibility is one thing, but we also like to go one step further. And rather than offering visibility, we like to offer our customers reliability. So give them the tools to allow them to really take control of their supply chains and their operations.
Yeah. And is that same system that you're using for the shipping companies also used by the rail industry?
We've grown from our roots out of a very maritime focused industry, and that's still where I think the most of our expertise lies. But nowadays you see that there is way more interest in linking the information from the deep sea and from the maritime side to the hinterland logistics and to the shippers. Yeah. And we talked about this, Marjorie, in the past about the ETA, and how crucial this is in the whole process and in connecting those two environments. And I mean, it's for long been like one of the holy grails in our sector. Everybody is looking for a correct ETA. Companies are spending a lot of time, a lot of money in getting accurate ETAs, often manually. And for me, the question there is what is actually an ETA? That's something that I still see a lot of companies struggling with. Yeah. For some, it's the ETA is when the vessel arrives at the anchorage areas. For others, it's when the pilot boards the vessel. And I think to really extract value in our sector for the port community, you need to have the ETA at berth. That's a crucial thing. But we see that there is still a lot of challenges in finding out what is now the correct ETA at berth.
And why is that a challenge? Do other parties not agree and have different interests?
No, I think, and that's also the difference between visibility and reliability. I think that our sector is still working a lot with live data. So, for example, the ETA at this time, it's very heavily focused on AIS data, but AIS by definition, it's live, it's actual, it's the location of the vessel, its course and its speed. But you don't know exactly what berth it's going to, for example, and you don't know what other vessels are at that berth and when they are going to leave. So the issue there is that it's very difficult to predict when the vessel is going to be at berth and to connect these two together if you don't have planning. And that's something that we at Royal DirkZwager try to focus on as much as possible, like really connecting to these port management systems, because that's where the valuable data is at. That's where the agents, the terminals, and the port authority, that's where they plan, that's where they come together. And so by using this data, we try to provide valuable insights on the estimated time of arrival at berth.
And you said that there is a difference between having one source of information, public information, and having a lot of companies involved. How do you look at this? Because you are a private company. How would you look at having one system at a port that includes all this data?
I mean, it's always a discussion that you have often, right? One system to rule them all, and in theory, it's perfect. But I think you need to find a balance between having standards and having a centralization and flexibility and interconnectivity. And I like to make a comparison to air transportation as well, like Dominik. And in air transportation, we have perfect standardization. So if you have the flight number, you can get access to any kind of data, and everybody's connected together because there is a standard. In maritime and shipping, there is no standards because the terminal probably has their own order number. Then the shipper has their ERP reference, and so everybody's working with their own standards and their own and their own way of naming things. And so I think we need to find in the future a combination of getting these regulations and these standards coming top down, but also bottom up, working together and enabling interconnectivity between different systems that are used by these stakeholders.
Dominik, how do you see the way forward in this regard?
Well, we, as part of our group, we also have the HHLA Next. So that's the, as I call it, the most sexy part of the industry because our colleagues are working on the most innovative solutions. So we've also noticed that there are some inefficiencies with regards to the lack of the ETA of the vessels. And then, when you are a terminal and you have, let's say, 10 calls a day, and you need to arrange gangs, i.e., people to work on our colleagues' stevedores that are working on the cranes. We need to know if, let's say, the vessel has 5,000 moves for discharge and load, and then we need to have so many cranes deployed, so many colleagues from the stevedores to join and to work. And if we learn with let's say the optimal advancement in time that the vessel will be late, or she's not gonna call, or she's gonna skip, or she's gonna split, etc., etc., then we can do something with the resources we have at hand. So we've developed also the system called Hayport, and this has been successfully tested. We see that all these solutions are bringing value, and I think that the good thing in our industry is that we all see the same, and there are multiple solutions that you can see, right? It's not about only one company doing that and the other one is doing something completely different. We all see the need, which then means that this is like a true need that needs to be developed, both on the rail and also on the seaside.
Yeah, but is it a good thing that so many solutions to the same problems exist? Because I can also imagine that when you want to have connectivity, it needs to connect in one system. I'm not an expert on IT, but I can see that there's so many different systems popping up, and in every port the system is different, and some are public, some are privately owned, some have a open market, and some decide to organize it from the top down. What do you think is the best solution here?
Well, I think as long as we have a standard mean of communication, i.e., we exchange the information in a given format, then it's okay if this is a solution A, B, C, D, right? Because that's a free and open market. So we cannot say that only this system will work and all the other systems go to trash. Yeah. Remember I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Betamax and the VHS system and the video, recorders and players. And at some point of time, these were the two competing technologies, and in the end, one won because it was let's say chosen by the market. And I'm not saying, and I'm not ruling out that in future there will be few solutions that will be adopted by the customers because they will see most benefit in using this solution against the other solution, etc. Yeah. So I'm happy that these things are developed, because the more we develop, the more we advance our industry, the better it is for the customers.
Yeah. Going back to the ETA, you worked a lot on these cases. Basically, you've seen things go wrong, you've seen things go perfectly right. What happens if things go perfectly wrong?
If things go completely wrong, I think we have many examples in our sector, and I think like reliability-wise, we are definitely not yet where we should be. And I mean, one case, if I had to pick one, is very actual right now. I don't know if you followed the news, but in the US West Coast, we have been having strikes for the past 2 weeks, I think. since last night. Finally, I hope they have come to an agreement. But if disruptions take place, and we have many disruptions, it creates huge cascading effects through the whole supply chain. And in this case, for example, the US harbor laborers or laborers, they have been striking for 2 weeks, which means that at any given time, I think it's about 85,000 containers are just laying idle outside the port. It's creating huge burden, not only for the terminals, because they just cannot operate, but especially also for all the logistics companies who are just sitting there and they have no information. They don't know when are they going to come to an agreement. They don't know, is the vessel going to be diverted? Can I offer my services in that port? What's my customer going to want from me? So you're just basically like sitting there. You don't know, you don't have any information, and you have to work reactively. Then all of a sudden the process starts again. These harbor laborers, they're super happy because they can work again. Are all rested, so they're like working at 120%. All the vessels are coming in, and then the logistics companies, they just have to follow. And I think that's a big difference, and it's due to the fact, like we said, our siloed way of working. No information is being shared, which leads to these cascading delays.
Yeah. What would be the solution then? What do we need to do next?
I mean, it's difficult to come up with a single solution, but I think we are evolving in the right way. I think, first of all, we need to step away from our current way of working. So we are really task-oriented. People are working task-oriented. They have information, limited information. They go get the information from the other stakeholders. Then they take a decision, but probably when they take a decision, it's already outdated because the information has changed. So we need to get data. And I think what interests me a lot is in our sector, we have a lot of sleeping data, is what I call it. It's data caught up in Excel, in email. It's data that's available somewhere, but it's not digital. So we need to activate the sleeping data, and then we can streamline communication. And if we can improve and streamline communication, that's the next step. Then we can start optimizing our processes. And then the third level is really using that data to support decision-making and move more towards a process approach rather than a task-driven approach.
Yeah. So in 10 years, when you have a strike at the port of somebody from Dominik, on a port under your influence, this wouldn't happen and things go perfectly right and the data is available and there's no cascading effect, hopefully.
Well, I think the strikes and the demands from the employees in every industry are happening from time to time. Now the question is how to minimize the effect on the customers, right? So you're right that in the US, I think it's recently has been quite serious, but also happened last year. So these things happen in the port and terminal industry all over the globe. But again, the more efficient data we have, the better use of resources we can provide on both land side and on the sea side, on the terminal. It is better for us, but it's also better for customer and for the people who work with us, our partners, rail companies, shipping lines, truck drivers, everybody, because then we are limiting the costs and improving the efficiency of the whole chain. Yeah. So that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah. All right. We'll continue discussing this important topic in Bremen, 6th and 7th September. Thank you very much for that. I would like to move on to our next speaker, who will be providing a small and interesting presentation. Robert, you are prepared to give a presentation about the product called Scope AI. It's a new tool of Nexxiott, which is going to change our lives.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm going to be showing a little bit on how the future will be changing a little bit in terms of how we think of data and also in terms of how we access some of the efficiencies. So if we think in terms of, let's say, the starting point, right? Nexxiott is a company that offers easier, safer, and cleaner transportation, right? And the way we offer this is truly by finding ways how you can access the hidden insights that typically exist already in your business, but they're just not accessible since the data is just either super delayed or just not very reliable. And we talk about efficiencies here today a lot and reliability. And so just to set the scene a little bit for the Scope AI, I want to show you how the data first comes into the game, and then you will see the connection on the AI. So as a starting point, we have these devices that are put on non-powered assets like containers and rail cars, and they basically in real time track the location of the asset, right? So instead of you having a milestone event at the port, milestone event from your freight forwarder, or somebody who has some limited visibility of a trip, suddenly you start to receive really a complete view of what's going on in the field. And so we have several 100,000 of these devices out in the field, and what they really do is send billions of data points that you then need to figure out what to actually do with. So, you go from one challenge, which is not having enough data, to another challenge, which is having too much data. And for this reason, we have built an AI tool, which is Scope AI, which allows you to access the 0.01% of insights that really are relevant to you, right? So there's exceptions that you want to look at, and not, when everything is fine, you don't really care, but that's majority of the data is when everything's fine. And so how do you find a way to extract relevant insights that are really specific to your business? And today, let's say if you have a report that you would like to get from your team, you will typically have a business analyst, you will have some sort of capability in your ERP system, maybe, where you try to put things together, and it gives you access maybe to some insights very quickly, but majority of the time, if your questions are really specific, you will have to wait for the data to come to you from a business analyst who's now taking on this task. So the way we see it at Nexxiott is that the predefined way of working is really the way of the past, and we see that there's a trend, a mega trend in mass customization, and that means also mass customization in terms of how you access data. So what we built is a tool that allows you to figure out basically what's going on in your field, in your fleet, in your operations site, just by asking questions the same way you would ask these things if you're familiar with tools like ChatGPT. You're simply conversing with the system and it gives you answers. So for example, show me all assets that are currently in Germany. So you simply ask a question, the system connects automatically to the backend. It tries to figure out what is it that you're trying to ask, and immediately offers those insights. So here, I immediately see the assets that are currently in Germany. I see their names, their exact locations. And this is just a starting point, right? So you start by exploring maybe one dimension, and then you probably want to start getting deeper insights. So maybe I want to see, show me assets by mileage per country. So for example, you're trying to optimize your rail business across different segments, and maybe in some countries you also get, for example, subsidies for using certain routes. You can use these insights to very quickly access it just by asking a question. And so here, I actually asked the question slightly wrong. So I just basically asked, show me all assets basically by mileage, and some of them are basically associated with country behind the scenes. However, they're sorted today just by the asset that travels the most. And this is where you can very quickly navigate and change the discussion, and you would probably want to see actually grouped by country. So show me assets, show me mileage of assets grouped by country. And the system will automatically figure out what is it that you're really trying to achieve. And now I see, so we see ocean, a lot of them on the ocean, but then you start to really see mileage of assets per different country in this setup. And you can then do even more analytics on top of it. You can start sorting it, extracting it. As we have physical hardware on every basically asset class, you can also start to access insights of what's going on around the asset, what's happening inside an asset. So for example, show me assets where the doors are open, would hopefully show me assets where currently the doors are open. And now it shows it as a list, but I can also ask it to show it as a map, right? And so suddenly you can start to see, is the asset going, let's say, past a gate in and gate out process, and is it opening, do we see opening of a door where it should not have happened, right? Is it officially in a customs area now where it's likely that somebody opens it? or is it just in a one part of a trip? So suddenly you really can start to see not only, let's say, what assets are doing by just a dot on a map, but you can really interrogate the data and try to ask questions that specifically relate to your business, right? So if you're having a C-level meeting and you just need one insight to help you make a decision, you can now ask it instead of revert to a later time when somebody brings that data to you. So this is just a starting point in terms of how we see AI will help logistics. We call this setup an AI assistant. So this is a very, very early level of intelligence, right? So where you just ask for the data, and the system creates the data for you. What we think the next step will be, and this is what we're working on now as well, is AI advisory. So not only it's a, let's say, a reactive system where you ask something and it reacts back, we want to have a predictive capability built into the AI as well, which does analytics behind the scenes. So for example, majority of our business clients have KPIs around sustainability. So that means you have to prove that you're, for example, you don't have, let's say, your CO2 quotas are reaching certain kind of limits, and some clients want to avoid, for example, empty miles and so on. And instead of you having a human trying to analyze this, we see that this is going to be done by an AI, because for a human to do this is quite significant effort. For AI, it's a lot more easier. So stage 2 is AI advisory, and stage 3, ultimately, we reach AI agents with executive function. And what that means is you will have tools that basically help you to also make not only decisions, but also automated actions. So today, Dominik mentioned this before, you have a lot of manual processes there. You have to send papers even physically today in some cases. The way we see it is that a lot of these processes will be aided, initially just assisted, but ultimately aided and executed purely by AI agents.
And the EU has just passed a law on AI. I'm sure you followed it. Are there any restrictions coming up for you?
Yeah, so the AI is currently very much let's say, a new field for everyone. So we see that there's a regulation that is there in EU and in US and in Japan, actually slightly different. I think it will take a while until we find a common ground for it. The biggest challenge and the fear that people have is that you use their data for some kind of training that can be then potentially misused outside of the context.
Yeah, I can also imagine that you want to know what the competitor is doing. Is he maybe handling containers faster than I am? Can I find out? Do you fear any things like that?
Yeah, so actually one of the starting points for us building these products that you saw before, how do we separate the data and still be able to offer the value? So actually, it's quite a big challenge to make sure that this black box data model around AI does not cross boundaries across different clients. So data protection and security was one of the key starting points for us.
Yeah. Nicolas, what do you think? The sleeping data will be woken up?
I think it's very interesting, and it's an issue that most of us probably face nowadays, because more and more things are being connected, more and more data becomes available, and then the challenge is what are we going to do with this data? And you can spend a lot of time, a lot of data analysts, but there the issue is in most cases you need to bring together people with data knowledge and knowledge about data analytics, and you need to bring them together with people with knowledge about the processes and the business. And I think AI could in some ways form a bridge between those two, where people with business knowledge could start using data analytics tools more efficiently.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing this, and we're going to see more of you, I guess.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. And then we've come to the last part of this webinar. Onno de Jong, you're not here to just say useful things, as you always are.
Thanks.
But you are also here to say goodbye from your role that you've always had for Promedia. You are going to change jobs.
Yeah.
And where are you going?
Yeah, whereas I used to work as a consultant, and then of course that you're knowledgeable a little on many topics, so that was why I was always happy to, well, that you were happy to have me and the other way around. Now I will move to the Port of Rotterdam Authority, and I think what I will do there already, a very good introduction was given by Dominik. A port is as good as its hinterland, and I will work in their external affairs department as an advisor on hinterland accessibility, and then especially with all topics concerning policy, strategic outlook. So yes, a bit of a change to what we've always done now.
Yeah. And was this a childhood dream?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I was very happy at Ecorys, and I like to work, but in your head you always have this little list of jobs that if they become available, they might be interesting. And often the job is occupied by someone, but now it happened that well, one of these jobs on this list became available. So I sent a letter, and that letter was answered with yes. Do you want to come over for a job interview? And from one thing came another.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
The reason why we're saying, well, we're not saying goodbye, but you may not be as actively involved as you always were because you will be working for another organization.
Yeah.
So we don't know if we will see you back as a moderator. But
Hopefully.
the Port of we can always ask you as a speaker. Port of Rotterdam. What do we? Why the Port of Rotterdam? What?
It's still, I mean, the Port of Rotterdam, it is still the biggest port in Europe. I mean, some competitors are quite closely catching up, and that also makes it very interesting. But still, anyone knows, okay, you're going to work for the Port of Rotterdam. So yeah, I know that Port of Rotterdam, it's well known, and still indeed the scale of what is going on there is still very, very, very interesting, and especially in the field that I love. It's hinterland logistics, it's rail, inland waterways.
Yeah. But would you have accepted the same job as it was if it was asked by the Port of Hamburg?
Yes, but then I would have to move to Germany, which would be okay for me. But then I would have to convince my wife. No,
And
but,
you too.
and my two children, but they're still at an age that, of course, that would be fine. No, but I mean, speaking of Hamburg, it's of course one of the big competitors, and some of you might have read that indeed Hamburg is now thinking about their own strategic planning and how should they adapt to indeed increasing ship sizes, increased needs for sustainability. But still, if you look at the modal split over there, rail is a dominant modality.
Yeah.
And that's something that many ports, also Rotterdam, can be jealous of.
Yeah, but where is the difference then? Because I just tried to understand a little bit from Dominik why one port is better at rail than the other. What do you think is the difference?
I think, for instance, for Rotterdam, the easy answer would be you have the River Rhine, so you have a natural, very good competitor within the waterways, which by itself is fine. I mean, if your ambition is to move goods in the most sustainable and most efficient way, and probably my next employer as well doesn't really care if that's via inland waterway, rail, and maybe in the future even road, as long as it's indeed emission friendly, you can drive at different times, avoid congestion, etc. But for other ports, indeed, a successful rail product does something have to do with how efficient is the terminal organized from the hinterland side, but also the rail infrastructure in the port. How well is that managed? Is it managed by the port or is it managed by the infrastructure manager? And how is that going? And can investments be made?
Yeah, and do you think you can contribute or change in the Port of Rotterdam in that sense?
I think they have a very everyone there is very knowledgeable on the topic.
Now you can still be critical. You're not officially yet hired.
No, I know. And the interesting thing is that out of my current job, I've worked basically with all these stakeholders we've mentioned. I've worked for them. I mean, that's the good thing if you're a consultant. You often work for many different parties. And now the interesting thing is, can I bring together that knowledge into something into this new role, and most viewers will be aware that often the big ports do have problems indeed with railway infrastructure in the hinterland, and especially also what you see in Europe, and we've discussed this many times. If you have many passenger trains as well, then you do know that it will be quite hard if you also want to fit in more freight trains. What is the public opinion thinking about these freight trains? So yeah, many challenges to be tackled.
Yeah. There's actually one question from a speaker, from a guest, saying, let's talk about rail efficiency. For example, why is the rail appointment at big container terminals in Rotterdam approximately 8 hours, while discharging and loading of a train can be done in 1.5. Is that a question you can already answer right now?
No, well, I can give my current, my consultant's answer, of course, I can give that. Yeah, these are typically examples indeed why you need this, why you need to know this data in advance. Can you shorten these times if you would have better information? What kind of contractual agreements are there in place? And what happens, say, if you would have loaded this train in 1.5 hours, can then the infrastructure manager guarantee that you can drive off the terminal and go to your end destination in, let's say, Germany or Switzerland?
Yeah.
Or does it mean that you just have to wait at the shunting yard for a couple of hours afterwards?
Yeah, that's that cooperation again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. I think you are going to put all your energy in that. I would also like to look back at all the things we have done because, yeah, for those who don't know, Onno de Jong has moderated, blogged, spoken at our events, and done more. I always called you, you gave useful answers. And just to dive a little bit into history, I think it was the first time we organized a summit, RailFreight Summit in Wrocław. I wasn't there personally, but that was our first event. There you were a speaker. And then the event after that, the RailFreight Summit, which was in Gdansk, you were moderating one session.
Yeah.
And that was a session which also included Dominik. Do you remember Dominik? Or if you're still there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. How could I forget?
Yeah. Yeah.
This was
Very nice event.
Yeah, it was in Gdansk, and you were one of the panelists. Onno was there to stage this this session, and then we thought he has a talent. We're going to do this more often. And then we went to Venlo together. We had the European Silk Road Summit, which we moderated together. We just stood together on stage, and it was my favorite event, I think. It was amazing. It was this huge hall,
Really
and
big.
it just felt like we were pop stars, actually. Very nice event. And then came, this was the RailFreight Summit
In 22.
2022, which was last year in the city of Warsaw.
Yeah.
Very nice event. This was your favorite.
Yeah.
Why was this your favorite?
Yeah, because that one you were still present, and of course then we had the first time in the. I think that time it was bigger side events, and of course going to Warsaw I think was a very good thing, capital city. But indeed, by looking back at that picture, the energy we had in Venlo, and also the topics, Silk Road becomes mainstream.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Only
2 years, 2-3 years ago then.
Yeah, and now it's is the Silk Road still alive? That's the question we're answering now.
That's one we were discussing it the other day. It's and this is my truly my personal opinion. Yeah, it has changed. I think in the last 5 years we have seen a rapid rise in the whole Silk Road adventure. 1 million TEUs transport. And then due to the terrible war. Yeah, we have to admit that things are much harder than they used to be. Yes, there's much traffic on the Silk Road, but that's China, Russia. China transits via Russia to Europe, much less than before. So the topic has changed, but still, and that's why I really still like these conferences and believe in them. RailFreight as such, as a modality, I believe in the product. For Europe, it's of course very important. And yes, rail has had difficult times. It is facing difficult times. I mean, everything we've discussed here with inefficiencies, but also you have to compete with truck that can offer low prices, brings you door to door. And this is why I'm so glad that you have these technological innovations that create a better efficiency. I mean, all the digital automated couplings, the automated train operation, etc., etc. That's one thing, and concepts like the non-craneable trailers and everything we've discussed also here on this in this studio. You need it because otherwise you might lose out as RailFreight industry.
You've basically experienced 5 years of these events. If we look into the future in 10 years, what do you think will be the topics of our RailFreight Summit?
I'm sure that some of them, I mean, whatever happens, they will be there. Inefficiency will be discussed. We always will have discussion which gateway to Europe to choose. We will always have, I mean, now AI is the name of the game, but there will be some new, maybe at DirkZwager they will have some new technology, or at Nexxiott, that will then be the concept we will discuss.
And where do you think Dominik will work?
Hopefully still with HHLA International.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so as well. Now, hopefully, indeed, it's a very nice partner to have on this European scene.
And the European Silk Road Summit, what will be the topics we're discussing? From going to, is it still mainstream to, is it still alive? Where are we?
I truly hope that, of course, this terrible war, that stops, and then maybe, and that's just only a very limited benefit of the war being stopped would be hopefully that indeed also the Silk Road Summit can be Silk Road can be back in operation also on the China-Europe part. Yeah. But we'll see. I don't know what role I will play in the coming events, but I'm sure that I will follow them and also try and see what the atmosphere will be.
Yeah, well, for sure, I will miss you on stage. I always really liked moderating our events with you, having you as a speaker. We have congrats from the webinar guests as well, from Rob Vos as well. So yeah, everybody really appreciated you. So I want to thank you, and for that I need a small favor from our guys behind the scene. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
This is
Thank
for
you so much. You're lovely.
Thank you
You're
for
lovely.
everything you have done for us, and all the best in your new job. Hopefully we see you as the Port of Rotterdam representative in our webinars again.
I truly hope so. You thanks again also for having all these fun at these conferences. I mean, we already said some things can be discussed during a webinar, but no, it has been.
You had to be there.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, I would like to wrap things up. Nicolas, thank you as well for being here.
Thank you so much.
It's nice to mention that we are actually colleagues, nobody knows, but the Royal DirkZwager and the ProMedia are now one.
Sister companies.
Yes, sister companies, so we're all one big family. And Dominik and Robert, thank you very much for joining us online, and we will see you all soon in Bremen. For that, I have a final slide, so don't go away yet. Here you are. If you want to sign up for this event, this is where you can do it. There is a website. You can register. The registration has just opened. We're very early, but we have the summer holidays in between, so don't forget. I will see you there. And for now, have a good afternoon. Goodbye. Don't forget.